Would you dare to step into a journey through the most extreme, unforgiving, and unbelievable corners of this vast planet? This is where nature and human beings are pushed to the absolute limits of survival, danger, and overwhelming beauty. From dark abysses and raging deadly waters to snow-covered peaks rising high among the clouds, every destination carries a breathtaking story. You will witness heavily poisoned lands, mysterious isolated communities, and bizarre wonders that seem to belong to a distant planet. Prepare yourself, because we are about to begin a journey toward the most dangerous, extreme, and haunting places at the edge of the world. Kaohsiung Salt Lake, China. Standing on this blinding white crust, you are actually walking over more than 66 billion tonnes of salt, a reserve vast enough to supply humanity for about 1,000 years. Under strong light, magnesium, lithium, and potassium turn the pools into glowing patches of jade green and pale yellow green, making the lake look almost self-lit. Across a white surface that resembles eternal snow, salt crystals grow into sharp flowers shaped like coral or pagodas, beautiful to see but sharp enough to cut skin. It is the largest salt lake in China and one of the world's great inland salt basins, spreading across about 2,260 square miles like a dried mineral sea. The astonishing part is that the salt crust, about 7 to 66 feet thick, is hard enough to carry a heavy railway and a 20-mile highway built directly on the lake without support pillars. Beneath that cold white world lies a huge industrial treasure, because Kaohsiung is now regarded as one of China's most important sources of potassium and lithium. Saltstraumen, Norway. Every 6 hours, about 400 million cubic metres of seawater are forced through a gap only 490 feet wide, turning Saltstraumen into one of the strongest tidal currents on Earth. Spanning that fury is a concrete bridge about 2,520 feet long with roughly 135 feet of clearance, like a thin line hanging above a living whirlpool. This cycle repeats 4 times a day, with the sea boiling in one moment and then turning eerily calm in the next. At peak force, the current twists into giant whirlpools up to 33 feet wide and about 16 feet deep, enough to make any small boat think twice. The root of that violence is a water level difference that can reach about 3.3 feet between the two sides of the strait, pulling the whole mass of water back and forth like a giant tidal machine. Yet that same turbulence feeds a sea so rich in fish and marine life that Saltstraumen feels both like a deadly trap of water and a living oasis of the far north. Icon Spring, China. Breaking the silence of the desolate desert, this bizarre wonder pins a chilling gaze straight up at the sky and is praised as the devil's eye. Running along the spring's mouth, countless crystallised circles of iron ore and sulphur intertwine to create a biological iris that is ghostily perfect. Taking the boiling core as a pupil, measuring 33 feet in diameter, the toxic water spreads over the rusty land to draw a dazzling giant eyeball. Deep beneath that magical look is a cruel, geothermal spring continuously pushing up tons of minerals from under the earth. The overwhelming alkalinity and sulphur concentration have turned this entire area into a lifeless realm of death, where absolutely no blade of grass or tree trunk can take root to survive. Most terrifying of all, that colourful cracked earth crust is actually a mushy underground swamp. A hidden trap ready to collapse and permanently swallow any creature accidentally stepping on it. Ulan Lake, China. Completely hiding from all navigation devices and phone signals, this thick red puddle boiling amidst the desert is dubbed the bleeding heart of the planet. Behind that magical beauty is a deadly salinity, turning it into a toxic liquid that can squeeze out the last drop of water in your body if desperate travellers try to taste it. Containing massive amounts of dead algae and salt, this syrupy surface permanently creates no white foam but only quivers in palpitating beats under the desert wind. When the temperature difference leaps from sub-zero to over 104 degrees Fahrenheit, the crystallized salt surface cracks open, crisscrossing into a network exactly like blood vessel neurons. Only by looking straight down from the air will you be terrified to realise it possesses the exact anatomical shape of a fiercely beating biological heart, with full atria and ventricles. Shibam, Yemen. Rising suddenly from a dry river valley, Shibam looks like a block of mud skyscrapers thrown into the desert, which is why it is called the Manhattan of the desert. Every tower here was shaped by hand from earth, straw and water, dried in the sun, and stacked upward to turn dry valley soil into a vertical skyline. Few people realise the city goes back to around the 3rd century and became important very early, meaning it stood more than 1,000 years ahead of many modern high-rise cities. Its value is so great that UNESCO listed Shibam as a World Heritage Site in 1982, but since 2015 it has also remained on the danger list because of conflict and decay. Mount Everest, Nepal/China. Stretching across the border of Nepal and China, Mount Everest is the roof of the world, rising to about 29,032 feet, and still inching upward by roughly 1/10 of an inch each year because of tectonic collision. The final section before the summit is not a gentle slope, but a knife edge of ice, with drops of thousands of feet falling away on both sides. Around it move huge glaciers that crush against each other and hide deep crevasses beneath thin layers of snow. From far away, the summit often looks as if it is smoking, but that effect is really snow torn into the air by jet stream winds that can exceed 100 miles per hour near the peak. Above about 26,000 feet begins the death zone, where the air holds only about 1/3 of the oxygen found at sea level, turning every step into a negotiation with survival. And it was on that frozen mass that Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay made the first successful summit in 1953, turning Everest into the ultimate symbol of human climbing ambition. A community can build homes, open schools, and walk every day above the sea, even though the water below is only about 5 to 10 feet deep. In that tight space, wooden paths about 5 feet wide keep every step close to the water, especially where crowded roofs block much of the daylight. Because they live directly above the sea, the people of Koh Phangan must keep reinforcing the piles, since the early mangrove wood was easily hollowed by marine borers and slowly replaced with concrete. More than 100,000 piles are the real foundation of the whole settlement, holding homes, schools and restaurants above the mud instead of natural ground. Behind the village, a cast limestone cliff raised from an ancient seabed creates a fixed point, making this settlement less exposed in open water. The floating football field, built by children from old boards in 1986, shows how people here adapt, because one missed kick or wrong step can send the ball, or even a person, straight into the sea. At Khumbu Icefall, one wrong step can turn the beautiful blue ice into a frozen gap that swallows people. Over ice cracks with no real path, guides have to tie 3 to 4 aluminum ladders into a temporary bridge for each step. Right above them, ice towers as tall as a 3-story house lean in silence, and if they weaken even a little, the whole mass can fall at any moment. Khumbu Icefall still slides about 3 to 4 feet each day, making today's surface completely different from yesterday's. Flat snow that seems safe can hide the mouth of a crevasse more than 148 feet deep, where a person can disappear from the ice in just a few seconds. Climbing teams usually pass through here between 2 and 5 in the morning, while the cold still keeps the ice firm enough for them to get across before sunrise. From below, the mad honey cliffs appear with huge honeycombs, like golden panels hanging on a vertical rock face, while the honey hunter looks tiny in open space. When the first wax layer is pierced, tens of thousands of bees rush out at once, turning the harvest into a tense fight for balance. Because there is no safe path, the Gurung people must hold on to ladders about 160 feet long, woven from young bamboo and soaked roots to press against the rock. This place is even more dangerous because the giant Himalayan honeybee grows about 1 inch long, can fly in thin air from about 4,000 to 13,000 feet, and builds nests weighing about 130 pounds. Even so, honey hunting here has been passed down for more than 2,000 years, while ancient traces show humans have taken this risk for about 12,000 years. Even after leaving the cliff, the risk remains, because honey from the mad honey cliffs can cause dizziness and hallucinations if too much is eaten.
Badian Jaran Desert, China. At the meeting point of three great sandy regions of China, Badian Jaran looks like another planet, and it is also the country's third largest desert and second largest drifting desert. Around the bright lakes lie broad white salt rims that look like frozen rings of winter dropped into a summer desert. Under harsh light, the water shifts into jade, pink and purple, making the whole sand sea seem as if it glows from within. The giant dunes rise to about 1,509 feet, and when wind sweeps their slopes, the desert can roar with the thunder-like sound of singing sand. The deepest contradiction is that beneath the dry sand lies groundwater, feeding more than 100 lakes hidden between the dunes, turning the desert into a maze of water inside a sea of sand. Stranger still, those lakes are not all the same. Some are fresh, some are hypersaline, making Badian Jaran feel like an open-air laboratory built by nature itself.
Rising from the ocean like the sharp fangs of a sea monster, the Farallon Islands, nearly 30 miles off the west coast of America, appear like a desolate and deadly field of rock. Few people know that the deep seabed around them was once turned into a nuclear dump, holding more than 47,555-gallon drums of radioactive waste tossed down since the mid-20th century. Right above those waters, the Red Triangle becomes a bloody hunting arena where great white sharks up to 20 feet long silently stalk and tear their prey apart. In contrast to the dark ocean below, the bare granite surfaces of the islands look as if they are covered in white snow, but they are actually coated with a massive layer of foul-smelling bird droppings. That gloomy atmosphere is further choked by the roar of sea lion colonies and the violent sound of waves constantly smashing against the cold cliffs. Finally, thick fog often swallows the islands, reducing visibility to below 50 feet and leaving this place almost completely cut off from the outside world. Unlike any calm lake, Bloody Lake in Russia is a bizarre, natural phenomenon that can dye its own surface red when the suffocating heat of summer arrives. Since the Russian Empire era, a special wading train was built here to plough the salt layer under the lake and support salt harvesting. The sight of a rusted iron locomotive roaring through the dark red water once shocked global media, because it looked like a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie. In reality, that thick red colour does not come from chemicals, but from biological pigments created by algae and microorganisms to fight solar radiation. The crazy part is that the tracks do not sit on concrete but are submerged under about 3 feet of water and rest directly on a massive crust of salt crystals. Around this dead-looking water are pure white salt blocks, sharp like countless pieces of a broken glass that could cut skin if someone walked on them barefoot. From above, this crowded stream of boats is not moving on a natural river, but on a man-made canal about 20 miles long. Although it is not very wide, the canal stays around 66 to 98 feet across and 7 to 10 feet deep, enough for hundreds of boats to move both ways while keeping the banks from eroding too quickly. The mud taken out when the canal was dug more than 1.5 centuries ago made both banks more fertile, which is why fruit slowly became the strongest image of this market. The canal was dug from 1866 with hoes and shovels, and after only 2 years it became an important trade route on the water. Along both banks, many wooden houses use traditional interlocking joints to handle movement, while motorboats and sharp propellers make travel risky. When hundreds of fruit boats slip past one another in a tight space, Damnoen Sarawak floating market looks bright on the water, but one small collision can quickly cause chaos. The sea here feels like a giant throat of the ocean where a massive body of water is forced through under non-stop wind and waves. Drake Passage is about 620 miles wide, yet it forces the Antarctic circumpolar current through with a flow about 600 times greater than the Amazon River. When currents meet violent winds, the sea can rise into wave walls about 66 to 98 feet high, strong enough to break even a steel ship's body. Beneath the cold grey surface, the water is about 11,155 feet deep on average, with seafloor cracks dropping beyond 15,748 feet and making the whole passage harder to predict. To survive this place, many modern expedition ships need a special bow, not climbing over waves, but cutting straight through the water wall like an axe blade. During long storms, giant albatrosses still glide beside ships, with wingspans up to about 11 feet. Barely flapping as they ride the brutal winds. A beach so clean that it almost has no trace of industry is also a place where strangers can be stopped before they even move far onto the shore. On North Sentinel Island, the forest is so dense that it forms a sealed green roof, making it almost impossible to observe the tribe's homes from above. After the 2004 earthquake, coral reefs around the island were lifted and dried out, creating a sharp stone barrier that makes boats very hard to bring close. The people do not live in closed houses but build leaning shelters from branches and leaves, often facing one another so they can watch the area more easily. Although cut off from the modern world, they still take iron from stranded ships to make arrowheads, turning outside material into weapons for protecting their land. The most haunting image came after the tsunami, when a warrior on the beach still raised a bow toward a helicopter, as if reminding the world that this island does not want to be touched. On the surface, everything looks so quiet that it seems harmless, but just a few yards below is a black world that can keep a diver forever. Since the 1980s, Eagle's Nest Cave has taken the lives of at least 12 divers. And the frightening part is that many of them were highly experienced technical diving experts. The closure order in 1999 once turned this place into a forbidden zone, showing that its danger was no longer just a rumour among cave divers. The deepest explored point drops about 310 feet, where the pressure is 10 times stronger than on the surface and turns every breath into a decision that must be calculated carefully. The cave water can be crystal clear, but one wrong fin kick can stir up fine mud and drop visibility from 100 feet to zero in just 3 seconds. After only about 30 minutes near the bottom, a diver cannot rise straight back up, but may need 3 to 4 hours in shallow water while the body slowly adjusts again. Crossing the elevation line here feels like moving through several climate worlds, from cold mountain slopes down into hot, humid rainforest within the same protected area. Across about 7,320 square miles, Madidi National Park holds more than 1,000 bird species, showing a density of life that few places can match. In the lowland forest, the canopy can be so thick that only about 2% of sunlight reaches the ground, making daytime feel dark and stifling. Inside that shadowy forest, some plants can shoot seeds at up to 160 miles per hour, so vegetation itself becomes an unpredictable danger. The sap of some toxic trees can burn the eyes, while bullet ants can leave pain lasting for 24 hours after a sting. If someone is bitten by a venomous snake deep inside the forest, reaching a clinic can take 10 to 14 hours by motorboat, while the venom may damage the body much faster. The grey streaks pouring down the Eiger north face are sometimes not water, but chains of falling rocks dropping at terrifying speed. The strangest part is that inside the mountain itself, a railway runs through the rock, letting visitors look out at the vertical face from behind safe glass. Outside that glass, the weather on the wall can change in 15 minutes as clouds gather and pull temperatures down to about -4 degrees Fahrenheit, even while it is still sunny below. Because most of the rock face stays cold in shadow, meltwater from above can freeze again and turn the route into a deadly, slippery strip. Since the 1930s, the name Mordwant has stood like a warning after at least 64 climbers died here. Although the first successful climb in 1938 took 3 days, today's record on this wall has fallen below 2.5 hours, showing that people are still drawn toward the place that has taken many lives. The most frightening feeling in this sea is not waiting for a shark from far away, but waiting for it to suddenly burst out of the cloudy water right in front of the cage. At Gansby, a narrow stretch of water once became a natural hunting route where seals had to pass through while great white sharks waited below. When prey is torn apart at the surface, thousands of seabirds dive down to steal flying scraps of flesh, turning the hunt into living chaos. Offshore reefs also tore apart many ships before a lighthouse existed, leaving a cold shipwreck graveyard under the sea. Recently, just one pair of orcas could make great white sharks disappear for months because they hunt shark livers with terrifying precision. Cage diving here feels even more tense because visitors often hold their breath and pull themselves underwater, facing the predator with only one short lungful of air. Under the shade of old trees, this narrow stream looks more like a peaceful brook than a place that once swallowed someone in a single slip. In the 12th century, a young noble boy tried to jump across the stream with his dog, then slipped and vanished into the current. His mother's grief later turned the land near the Strid into the site of a large abbey, as if the memory of death had been kept in stone. Today, multilingual warning signs are nailed straight onto tree trunks, showing that authorities still have to remind visitors this beauty is not safe. Experiments using biological dye once showed that the water took a very long time to appear downstream, proving that underground chambers below the narrow gap can hold almost anything. The most frightening part is that this place still has no tall metal fence, so the line between a forest walk and a deadly accident remains in each step. Amidst the brilliant desert of Western Australia, the ghost town of Wittenoom appears as a devastating biological wound that can never be healed. To bury the disaster, the government stripped the area of its legal status in 2007, dismantling all signs to wipe it completely from human memory. The most painful tragedy was that past workers unknowingly brought toxic dust-covered clothes home, spreading the cancer death sentence to their own wives and children who never visited the mine. For 3 decades, starting in 1930, this land thrived on blue asbestos mining before people realised they were unearthing a mass-killing weapon. The true assassins here are razor-sharp mineral fibres so incredibly tiny, measuring just 1/500th the thickness of a human hair, easily capable of piercing any lung. Despite the air being thick with eternal pathogens, Reckless individuals still blindly ignore the bans, gambling their entire lives just to trade for a few bragging photos online. Amidst the vast ocean, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch appears as a massive artificial scar holding countless toxic waste left behind by humans. On the surface of this dump, a frightening hybrid ecosystem has formed where billions of microorganisms and algae are forced to cling to plastic waste to survive. The water here has lost its natural blue colour, replaced by a thick microplastic soup that sparkles deceptively but is filled with chemicals and covering about 618,000 square miles. This oceanic mass of trash is almost invisible to satellites because most debris floats just beneath the waves. More frighteningly, decaying plastic waste can release a smell similar to live bait, fooling the sense of smell of marine animals and causing them to swallow it. They use them. Plastic items drifting since the 1970s still remain today, exposing the bitter truth of a disaster that almost never dies. Tornado Alley in America is often seen as nature's harsh crucible, where the strongest supercells can turn the sky itself into a source of destruction. The danger begins with the wide open terrain, where cold air and warm, humid air crash directly into each other, creating many of the world's most violent tornadoes. When a funnel cloud forms, the pressure can change suddenly, causing houses to tear apart in sections before the wind shreds them and carries them away. Even inside a shelter, people can still hear a terrifying roar, like a giant freight train rushing over the roof. To stay alive, many residents build steel safe rooms, anchor them deep into the foundation with strong cables, and make them able to withstand winds of about 250 miles per hour. After the storm, an entire neighbourhood may be scraped clean, but that solid box is sometimes the only thing left standing with survivors inside. Bolinas Beach in California does not feel like a normal vacation beach, but like a place deliberately cut off from the outside world. That difficult access creates a strange paradox. Even old wooden houses by the coast can be worth more than $2 million. To protect that privacy, many local residents have removed or blacked out road signs, making the entrance extremely hard for visitors to find. But what makes this place special is not only its unusual community, but also a coastline sitting on a fault zone that moves about 2 inches every year. When the tide pulls back, the danger underfoot gives way to a beautiful scene. A rocky reef appears with countless sea creatures trapped in small tide pools. Because of that fierce protection, Bolinas Beach still keeps a wild, isolated and quietly sad beauty that is rare in modern America. In only about 4 miles, the road has to climb about 1,440 feet. So each steep section seems pressed against the mountainside instead of spread across the ground. To create that strip of road, more than 200 workers died, and the narrowest bend had to jut out over the drop before turning back to keep gaining height. In 1935, more than 2,000 people used hoes and shovels to carve this pass for 7 months, only to open a wartime transport route. The limestone cliff rises at about 70 to 90 degrees, pressing the road against the mountain, while heavy rain can send falling rocks down onto the bends below. Seen from the valley floor, the 13 bends do not spread sideways but stack in layers, as if the road is climbing over itself. High above, a giant red suspension bridge crosses the valley, creating a strong contrast with the high winding road. Below is the old struggling route. Above is a modern way across.
Después de la erupción de 1914, Sakurajima en Japón dejó de ser una isla separada, porque alrededor de 3.000 millones de toneladas estadounidenses de lava rellenaron el mar y la conectaron permanentemente con el continente. El calor sigue oculto justo bajo esta tierra, por lo que incluso cavar un hoyo poco profundo en la arena costera puede hacer que brote agua caliente desde la fuente geotérmica subterránea. Pero esa sensación de tranquilidad siempre convive con el peligro, porque los niños deben usar cascos en su camino a la escuela para protegerse de la caída de piedra pómez después de las erupciones. Este volcán rara vez permanece en calma, produciendo hasta 1.000 erupciones al año y convirtiendo las explosiones y la caída de ceniza en parte de la vida cotidiana. Cuando la columna de ceniza se eleva hacia el cielo, innumerables partículas chocan entre sí y generan relámpagos rojos y púrpuras, haciendo que parezca que el cielo está siendo desgarrado por cargas eléctricas. Por eso los habitantes no solo consultan el pronóstico de lluvia o de sol, sino también el pronóstico matutino de ceniza para saber hacia dónde llevará el viento esa nieve gris.
Beneath the seemingly peaceful green grass, Grunard Island in the United Kingdom was once turned into a biological testing zone, where coastal beauty hid a disease that could kill on a massive scale. What made the island terrifying was anthrax spores, because they can survive in soil for a very long time. And when inhaled, the mortality rate can reach up to 90% if not treated in time. Although the island is only about 1 mile long and less than 1 mile wide, it was once treated like a natural prison, holding an extremely high concentration of deadly bacteria on Earth's surface. To remove the disease, authorities had to soak the ground with 280 tonnes of concentrated formaldehyde mixed with 2,000 tonnes of seawater, trying to disinfect each poisoned layer of soil. Its hidden history shocked the public when protesters secretly dug up about 300 pounds of contaminated soil and dumped it in front of a military facility to force the government to pay attention. Only after 40 new sheep were released onto the island, grazed there and survived safely, did Gruinard officially escape quarantine, though the feeling of death still seems trapped in its emptiness. Stripped of the romantic look of a tropical river, the Citarum River in Indonesia appears like a floating landfill where many sections of water are hidden beneath thick layers of trash. Beneath that trash, the river water changes colour because of chemicals, sometimes turning dark red like blood and other times black like tar. In that suffocating scene, poor residents paddle wooden boats through the sea of waste, using poles to collect plastic bottles and scrap to sell instead of fishing. This disaster has lasted for decades, as household wastewater and chemicals from thousands of textile facilities keep pouring straight into the river. The huge amount of toxins causes many sections to lose almost all dissolved oxygen, making it hard for fish and aquatic life to survive. The greatest tragedy is that the Citarum still provides daily water, irrigation, and livelihoods for tens of millions of people trapped beside this poisonous flow. If a crack usually brings to mind separation, this one forces all life above it to adapt to ground that has never truly stood still. Large buildings in the affected region must use massive rubber and steel dampers, allowing them to sway with the ground instead of breaking apart immediately. From above, this fault stretches for about 746 miles and appears like a straight cut across deserts, mountains, and dry landscapes. In some places, groundwater rises through the fracture and creates green oases, yet that life grows directly on a wound that has never fully settled. In the end, this place is not just a geological fault, but a reminder that even humanity's strongest foundations can rest upon a force that has not yet been released.
Chukotka, Russia. At the far edge of Russia, Chukotka is a rare piece of land that lies partly in the Western Hemisphere and right beside the international date line, making it feel as if one more step could touch a new day. Covering more than 278,000 square miles, but home to only about 50,000 people, it feels emptier than its cold is harsh. Nearly the whole region is treeless tundra over permafrost. So bright red, yellow, and blue, buildings stand on supports about 3 to 7 feet above the ground to protect their foundations. The strangest part is that when you look across the water, you are almost looking into yesterday with a time gap of up to 21 hours across a narrow strait. Winter is long, dark, and brutal, with temperatures often dropping below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, while blizzards keep hitting and summer passes almost in a flash. Most of Chukotka is nearly roadless, so people rely mainly on plains or winter routes across frozen rivers. And entering this border region also requires a special permit.
The way into this village is not just a steep climb, because people must also cross cliff sections stretching for miles on risky, simple transport. On slopes of about 45 to 60 degrees, many houses in Buskolan village must grip the rock, while wooden ladders were once pulled up at night against wild animals and enemies. Some village paths are less than 3 feet wide, so two people walking in opposite directions may have to lean close to the rock wall to pass. That isolation helps many old customs survive longer, especially the traditional hand-tapped tattoo practice. The artist uses a forest thorn, about 0.2 inches sharp, to tap ink into the skin, while the black colour comes from soot under cooking pots mixed with spring water. Around the village, stone-supported rice terraces cling to the mountainside, making this place both hard to reach and rich in a rare old identity. Sun Dung Cave, Vietnam. This is no longer just a cave, but a vast underground world buried beneath tropical forests, so surreal that it feels like a real hollow earth. Beneath giant skylights, an actual rainforest grows inside the darkness, with trees rising to about 98 feet and bending desperately toward narrow beams of light from the ceiling. Over millions of years, calcium-rich water has built stalagmites around 230 to 262 feet tall, standing like stone towers in the dark. Across the floor, house-sized limestone blocks lie beside soft white sand and a black underground river, forming a landscape that is both breathtakingly beautiful and deeply unsettling. Dead Vlei, Namibia. Spreading beneath a burning sun, Dead Vlei is a surreal, natural graveyard where life has vanished, yet death has been preserved like a masterpiece that refuses to decay. Around the pan rise red dunes, nearly 1,312 feet high, standing like giant walls of fire that seal a silent dead world inside. The most chilling part is that the trees died almost 1,000 years ago, but never fossilised and never rotted because the air is so dry that microbes and fungi can barely survive to break the wood down. In front of you, nature seems to arrange 4 violent colours on purpose: a pale white clay floor, charcoal black trunks, blazing red dunes, and a cold deep blue sky. After the water vanished, the clay pans split into countless sharp polygons, making the ground look as if it had been dried all the way to the bone. At summer noon, the sand can rise above 158 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cook an egg or soften the glue in cheap shoe soles in a short time. Euro's floating islands, Peru/Bolivia. Fleeing the reach of the Inca long ago, the Euros wove an entire community that floats on the lake, as if they chose to live apart from solid ground itself. These reed islands are tied to the lake bed with ropes and stakes, yet they can still be moved when necessary, like drifting villages built for survival. The hidden shock is that they do not rest over shallow water, because beneath that soft surface, the lake can plunge to about 920 feet. From the ground underfoot to the houses and boats, almost everything is woven from totora reeds laid over buoyant root blocks about 4 to 8 feet thick, like a giant living mattress. But that base is always rotting from below, so fresh reeds must be added again and again to keep an island from sinking apart. About 12,500 feet above sea level, making the Euro's floating islands one of the strangest inhabited worlds on Earth. Mount Roraima, Venezuela, Brazil, Guyana. Mount Roraima rises like a massive tabletop mountain with a wide, flat summit, creating the impression of a stone plateau isolated from the surrounding world. Thick clouds frequently wrap around the mountain slopes, making the summit appear like a rocky island floating high above the sky. But Chimbora's. Surrounding the plateau are vertical cliffs ranging from about 1,300 feet to more than 3,300 feet high, forming a huge natural wall. The summit itself covers roughly 12 square miles, creating a large plateau with rocky terrain very different from the landscape below. The rock layers that form the mountain are estimated to be between 2 billion years old, placing them among the oldest geological formations visible on Earth. Because the plateau remained isolated for millions of years, many unique plant species evolved, their leading scientists to describe Mount Roraima as a natural laboratory of evolution. Dasht-e Lot, Iran. Burned under the Iranian sun, Dashtit Elut is a natural furnace where satellites measured land surface heat up to 159.3 degrees Fahrenheit, among the highest ever recorded on Earth. Cutting through the desert are dry channels coated in white salt crystals, shining like ribbons of ice thrown into a giant fire pan. After about 200,000 years of wind erosion, the sediments have been carved into long, upright yardang corridors that look like the ruins of a forgotten ancient city. The desert itself stretches for about 300 miles and is nearly 200 miles wide, a huge basin where sand, salt and scorched rock exist in one extreme landscape. On the eastern side, giant dunes rise to about 1,640 feet, standing like frozen walls of surf in a sea of heat. The value of this deadly land is so great that Dasht-e-Lut was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2016, recognised as a living museum of extreme heat and strange landforms. Cliffs of Moa Island. Rising like a massive stone wall above the Atlantic Ocean, the cliffs of Moa mark a dramatic place where solid land suddenly gives way to endless water. The cliffs are also one of the largest seabird habitats in Ireland, where around 30,000 birds from more than 20 species nest along the narrow rock ledges. From the cliff edge, the view stretches across a vast ocean that continues for thousands of miles westward before reaching the next continent. The entire cliff line extends for about 9 miles along the coast and rises to nearly 700 feet at its highest point, forming a towering natural wall above the sea. Powerful Atlantic winds and waves slowly erode the rock by a few inches every year, gradually reshaping the edge of the cliffs. Today, about 1 million visitors travel here each year to witness this dramatic landscape, making it one of the most famous natural symbols of Ireland. Longyearbyen, Norway. Deep within the Arctic world, Longyearbyen exists as a small community where people continue daily life in one of the northernmost inhabited places on Earth. Around the town stretches a vast tundra landscape with almost no tall trees, only rock, ice, and snow-covered mountains shaping a raw polar environment. During summer, the sun does not set for about 4 months, bringing continuous daylight that lasts 24 hours each day. The settlement stands on permafrost, a permanently frozen layer of ground that can reach more than 300 feet deep beneath the surface. When winter arrives, the sun disappears for roughly 4 months, creating the long polar night when darkness dominates the Arctic sky. In this frozen environment, winter skies often display the aurora, glowing bands of green and purple light that move slowly across the Arctic darkness. Larunga Buddhist Academy, China. Larunga Buddhist Academy appears like a vast red city spreading across a mountainside where thousands of people gather to live and study within one of the most remarkable Tibetan Buddhist communities in the world. During its strongest period of growth, the settlement once held more than 30,000 monks and scholars who spent many years studying philosophy and spiritual practice. When winter snow covers the valley, the bright red houses stand out strongly against the white landscape, creating a dramatic and unusual visual scene. The entire settlement sits at about 13,100 feet above sea level, where the thin air of the high plateau makes everyday life more demanding than in lower regions. This powerful mix of a massive religious community, a harsh mountain environment, and a life focused on learning has made Larangar a unique symbol of knowledge, discipline, and faith. Lençóis Maranhenses, Brazil. Lençóis Maranhenses is a rare natural contradiction. A place where a sea of sand that seems lifeless comes alive with seasonal rain and holds water inside a white desert. The lagoons are never just one colour. Some shine jade green, some pale blue, and others turn darker, all glowing sharply against sand as white as snow. Even though it lies beside the Atlantic Ocean, these lagoons are freshwater, fed almost entirely by rain and trapped above an impermeable layer beneath the sand. Far from being a small patch of dunes, it holds the largest dune field in South America, stretching along about 50 miles of coastline like giant white sheets caught in the wind. These ghost lagoons are fullest from about June to September, then shrink or disappear in the dry season before returning in new shapes the next year. The landscape never truly stays still, because the dunes can migrate up to about 82 feet a year, making the water and the desert redraw each other again and again. Bisti Wilderness Area, USA. Looking like a piece of another planet, this wilderness is famous for thousands of strange rock forms, carved by wind and water over millions of years into hoodoos that resemble stone mushrooms, flying saucers, and cracked eggs. Even its name feels fitting because Bisti comes from Navajo and carries the idea of standing among natural adobe-like formations and clay hills. Protected as a wilderness area since 1984, this land of more than 45,000 acres has almost no marked trails or signs. So the deeper you go, the easier it is to lose direction among the repeating gullies. Yet about 70 million years ago, this same place was a wet coastal plain where dinosaurs and ancient forests once lived before being buried under mud and sand. So, That is why it has become a major fossil ground with petrified wood lying in the open and even the remains of the beastie beast, a predator about 30 feet long found in this Badlands landscape. Its surreal shapes, prehistoric past, and total isolation are what make Beastie Wilderness area one of the strangest wild places in the United States. Lake McDonald, USA. Looking like a giant cut through the mountains, this lake stretches for more than 10 miles, and its surface lies calm like a huge mirror. Along the shore are millions of smooth pebbles in red, green, orange, and purple, making the water's edge look like a spilled treasure of polished stones. Yet that beauty can also deceive the eye because only a few steps from shore, the water changes from crystal clear to deep blue, revealing a drop of more than 459 feet. The lake is so clear not because of magic, but because it is extremely low in nutrients, leaving almost no chance for algae to cloud the water. Surrounded by old forest and large mountains that block the wind, the lake often becomes completely still, reflecting the sky and mountain slopes like glass. That combination of cold, transparent water, brightly coloured stones, and hidden depth just below your feet is what makes Lake McDonald feel both beautiful enough to enchant and mysterious enough to unsettle. Glass Beach, Fort Bragg, USA. Once a foul-smelling coastal dump, this place now shines like a shoreline covered in gemstones after decades of relentless polishing by the sea. When the tide goes out, the beach does not make the soft whisper of sand, but a cold clicking sound from millions of glass pieces striking one another. Salt water and sand spent about 30 to 100 years grinding those sharp shards down, while slowly pulling out alkali compounds and turning them cloudy and smooth like jewels. Before that, from 1906 to 1967, people threw everything here, from bottles and household waste to old car bodies and rusted equipment. That is why the shore is now covered in countless pieces of green, red, brown, and blue sea glass, like a museum of trash remade by the ocean into something strangely beautiful. The deepest irony is that many visitors now secretly try to take them away, wanting to keep the very waste that earlier generations once threw aside without care. Ussuri Bay, Stekляшka Beach, Russia. Once a foul industrial dump filled with sharp waste, this place now shines like a beach covered in crystal. In the past, millions of bottles, broken ceramics, and factory debris were thrown straight into the sea, making the shore too dangerous to walk on barefoot. Over many decades, the waves shattered, smoothed, and reshaped that waste into rounded pieces of frosted glass in green, red, amber, and turquoise. In winter, the scene becomes even stranger when the bright glass lies on black volcanic sand and stands out against white snow and ice. From an ecological scar once avoided in shame, it has become a remarkable landscape, as if the ocean itself turned trash into jewels. But that beauty will not last forever, because the waves keep grinding the glass smaller, while many visitors still quietly take the best pieces away. Goblin Valley State Park, Utah, USA. Looking like an army of goblins turned to stone in the desert, this place is packed with short, twisted rock pillars that bulge like giant mushrooms. The landscape is so unreal that Hollywood once used it as the setting for an alien planet in a science fiction film. What makes it even stranger is that almost nothing here is straight or symmetrical, so the rocks can seem as if they are alive and quietly shifting when you are not looking. These formations were made from reddish sandstone of an ancient tidal plain about 170 million years ago, then carved by wind and water into large heads balanced on thin necks. You can walk directly into this stone maze, but the deeper you go, the easier it is to lose direction because thousands of shapes begin to repeat around you. In 2013, many people were shocked when a few visitors deliberately pushed over a goblin rock that had stood for more than 200 million years. It's White Pocket, USA. Exposed beneath the desert sun, this stone landscape shocks the eye with cracked sandstone that looks like a giant brain laid open on the ground. What feels even stranger is that the rolling terrain also kills sound very quickly, so at times you can stand only 60 feet from a companion and your voice almost disappears. In summer, the rock absorbs heat so intensely that the surface can rise above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, turning the whole area into an open-air furnace. About 190 million years ago, ancient dunes here were violently disturbed before they hardened, leaving layers of white, red, and orange sandstone twisted and frozen as if they were still melting. Because of that, the most striking feature is the raised brain rock, where folds and polygon patterns make the ground look like a living organ, enlarged to an impossible scale. And to reach this wonder, you still have to cross deep sand in a place with no paved road, where one careless move can be enough for a vehicle to be swallowed by the desert. Trona Pinnacles, California, USA. Looking like the ruins of a city turned to stone in the middle of the desert, this place is covered with more than 500 giant limestone towers rising from a cracked, dry lake bed. The formations appear in many shapes, from sharp spires and broad, tomb-like blocks to shorter cone forms, making the whole area feel like a strange, abandoned stone complex. The ground beneath them is not ordinary sand, but a salty crust rich in alkali minerals and borax, harsh enough to stop almost all plant life. The largest tower weighs many thousands of tons and rises up to 140 feet, making anyone below feel tiny inside a vast graveyard of stone. In fact, these pillars are mineral remains that formed around underwater springs on the floor of an ancient lake that was once more than 600 feet deep before the sun dried it away. And to reach this stone graveyard, you still have to cross nearly 5 miles of rough dirt road, where one careless mistake can leave a vehicle stranded in this hellish land. Valle de la Luna, Chile. Set in one of the driest deserts on Earth, this valley looks like a world that life left behind long ago. Because it is so dry and so similar to another planet, scientists have used this place to test equipment before sending it to Mars. Across that harsh landscape, a wide white crust of salt creates a powerful illusion, making many people think they are looking at snow in the middle of the desert. The air is so dry that sweat seems to vanish almost as soon as it appears, while the land has been carved into large dunes and jagged rock walls that look torn apart. At sunset, the rocks and salt shift from gold to orange, pink and deep purple, making the whole valley seem to smoulder before darkness takes over. And when night fully arrives, the sudden cold makes the salt crystals contract and crack, leaving behind small popping sounds in the absolute silence. Socotra, Yemen. Cut off from the mainland about 34 million years ago, this island appears like a fragment of another world drifting alone in the sea. In the middle of that dry landscape, white dunes curve around clear turquoise water, creating a beauty that feels both gentle and surreal. Beside them stand desert rose trees, with swollen trunks like elephant legs gripping dry rock before opening into bright pink flowers. The strangest symbol of the island is the dragon's blood tree, whose crown spreads like an upside-down umbrella and whose trunk releases a dark red sap that looks like fresh blood. That resin was once prized by Roman nobles for medicine, dye, and valuable alchemical use. Around all of this rise, jagged limestone plateaus and cave systems stretching for miles, helping make Socotra one of the strangest places on Earth. Yelyu Geopark, Taiwan. Stretching into the sea like a strip of stone carved and torn by time and heavy waves, this place is filled with strange rock forms, balanced as if they could fall into the ocean at any moment. Its most famous formation now has a neck less than 47 inches around, and many experts believe it may break within the next 5 to 10 years. This narrow landform is about 1 mile long, and it was once a dangerous coast where sharp rock and strong waves destroyed many ships over the centuries. What makes it most memorable is that each rock seems to have its own character, with some looking like the profile of a queen, some like a small shoe, and others like candles melting in the wind. The whole surface is yellow-brown from iron oxide, full of pits and cracks, cut deeper by seawater, making the cape look like a broken stone chessboard. In the middle of this landscape, the only human-made statue is not decoration, but a memorial to a local fisherman who jumped into rough waves to save a drowning student in 1964. Richat structure, Mauritania. Looking like a giant eye opened in the Sahara, this place is famous for concentric rings so large that they can only be fully seen from space. Set in one of the hottest and driest desert regions on Earth, The area has almost no plants or shade, so every rock layer lies exposed under brutal sunlight, like a giant geologic model. In reality, this is not a meteor crater, but a mass of rock that once swelled upward from below and was slowly stripped down by wind and ancient floods. That is why, from above, the rings appear in different colours and make the whole landform look like a geologic maze spiralling into the centre of the desert. But from the ground, you cannot see the full eye because it stretches nearly 30 miles across, and all you face are dry, broken ridges and burning belts of sand. After that long erosion, some of the harder rock rings still rise to about 300 feet, making this eye look even more like an ancient city half buried in the desert. Caño Cristales, Colombia. In the middle of deep green rainforest, this river appears like a bright red streak, so striking that it looks like a vein running through the land. The strangest part is that the water itself stays crystal clear, while the red glow below comes from a unique aquatic plant that bursts into colour only when light and water levels are exactly right. The riverbed is not flat either, because the current has carved smooth round holes into the rock, making the bands of colour swirl as if they were moving inside giant bowls. Beneath that clear water, the red clashes with yellow sand, green moss, blue water, and black ancient rock, creating a scene that feels almost unreal. But this beauty does not last all year, and it appears only for a short window between the wet season and the dry season before fading again. All of it flows over quartzite rock, about 1 billion years old, with water so poor in nutrients that algae can barely grow, which is why Caño Cristales is one of the strangest rivers on Earth. Spotted Lake, Canada. Bajo el sol abrasador, el lago revela más de 365 pozas de colores como una gigantesca ilusión viva. Entre esas pozas se entrelazan crestas minerales pálidas que mantienen cada mancha de agua dentro de su propio pequeño espacio. La escena cambia constantemente, porque los colores pueden variar con el tiempo y luego desaparecer otra vez cuando regresa la estación de lluvias. La superficie original del lago ya no permanece completamente intacta porque una antigua extracción industrial la dañó y dejó atrás solo un resto irregular. Aún así, los pueblos indígenas siguen viéndolo como un agua sagrada y creen que cada mancha tiene su propio poder curativo. Después de una larga lucha para recuperar la tierra en 2001, el lago ahora está estrictamente protegido detrás de una valla de acero para preservar la frágil belleza que aún queda. Chocolate Hills, Philippines, appears as a marvelous geological wonder, turning a vast plain into a massive and attractive candy box. Local folklore says these thousands of hills are the stones and sand left behind after a fierce battle between two ancient giants. From an aerial perspective, the undulating landscape looks exactly like a giant egg tray or a mysterious kingdom built by insects. This unique complex consists of nearly 1,800 identical cone-shaped hills occupying a vast area of 19 square miles. In reality, these rock formations are remnants of prehistoric coral reefs pushed up from the ocean and sculpted over millions of years. During the parched months, the covering grass withers and turns a rich brown, giving the hills their famous chocolate-like appearance. Waitomo Glowworm Caves, New Zealand. appears as a mysterious subterranean wonderland beneath New Zealand, where a turquoise galaxy burns brightly within the deep darkness. The strange truth is that this beauty is driven by hunger, because the more intensely the glowworms shine, the greater their chance of luring prey. They release about 70 predatory silk threads, measuring up to 16 inches, looking like crystal beads hanging from the ancient limestone ceiling. Deep underground lies a cavern about 60 feet high with such magnificent sound resonance that few modern spaces can rival it. To build this grand stone architecture, nature needs 100 long years just to extend the rock formations by a single inch. As you drift silently along the underground river, the dark mirror of the water doubles the magic of millions of stars shining above. Psychedelic salt mines, Russia. Deep underground, a technicolor labyrinth emerges like a psychedelic dream, where salt and mineral veins weave together into a bizarre palace. These vibrant patterns are actually the fossilised remnants of a shallow sea that vanished about 280 million years ago. Exploring this forgotten maze is extremely dangerous because unstable tunnels and invisible pockets of methane gas are always lurking in the dark. Located about 650 feet below the surface, immense geological pressure has twisted mineral layers into mesmerising swirling waves of colour. Strange concentric circles on the rock walls are the mechanical footprints of massive drills that once sliced through the earth decades ago. Sea of Stars, Maldives. As darkness falls, the oceans suddenly transform into a mirror reflecting the galaxy, where stars seem to melt into every crashing wave. Its most unique feature is the way it mirrors the night sky, doubling the splendour of the cosmos and blurring the line between Earth and the vast heavens. This magic reaches nearly perfect energy efficiency, as the chemical reactions inside the organisms produce light without giving off heat. The magnificent scene is actually created by millions of tiny plankton working together to illuminate the sea. Every time you walk across the wet sand, Enid, a surge of glowing light erupts beneath your feet as if you were casting a powerful spell. "12 Apostles Australia." Stand proudly on Australia's southern coast, a wonder shaped by the fury of the ocean and the slow force of time. This landscape is a striking example of nature's randomness, where every collapse helps create a scene that feels both perfect and haunting. Over millions of years, solid cliffs were carved into caves by waves, then into arches, and finally broken down into these isolated limestone pillars. Before 1922, this famous site was known by the far less majestic names Sow and Piglets. Beyond the visible stacks, researchers have also identified 5 more hidden apostles resting beneath the cold ocean surface. Wrapped in thick salt mist, these limestone giants often look like silent spirits guarding the edge of the wild southern sea. Kokohe Beach, New Zealand, resembles a fantasy shoreline where dozens of giant stone spheres lie scattered across the sand like dragon eggs from an ancient legend. Their cracked surfaces form strange web-like patterns, and some broken shells reveal bright calcite crystals hidden inside. Nature spent about 4 million years shaping each boulder in silence beneath the ocean floor before bringing them to light. These natural stone marbles can weigh several tons and grow to nearly 7 feet in diameter, giving the coast an almost unreal appearance. Maori legend tells that they are the fossilised food baskets from the wreck of an ancestral canoe, adding myth to a landscape already filled with mystery. Dullol, Ethiopia, is a mystical hydrothermal world where nature has shaped a surreal landscape that feels more like another planet than Earth. It is an extremely harsh and sterile place, where the toxic mix of acid and minerals is so severe that even bacteria struggle to survive. Bright neon yellow and emerald green acid pools create a chemical palette that looks mesmerizing, even though it is deadly. The brutal ground heat can rise to about 140 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to soften and damage the soles of shoes if you stand too long. Beneath the thick salt crust lies a hidden volcanic crater that keeps forcing hot mineral water upward instead of erupting with lava. Beyond that, vast cracked salt flats spread outward with a rough texture that resembles the dried skin of some ancient monster. Fly Geyser, Nevada, USA is a surreal masterpiece born from an accidental partnership between human activity and the geothermal forces beneath the desert. The vibrant neon bands clinging to its rocky surface are actually living colonies of thermophilic algae and cyanobacteria. To protect this strange beauty from commercial exploitation, the entire site was purchased by the Burning Man organization. This wonder did not even exist until a failed water drilling attempt in 1964 accidentally triggered the permanent geyser. It remains a living structure that keeps growing and changing shape as fresh minerals continue to build upon it every single day.